The Veil Nebula burned with colors that had no names in any mortal tongue. And at its heart, the 7 greatest civilizations in the galaxy gathered to celebrate their dominance over all creation. They called themselves the Assembled Divinity Council, and they had every right to that arrogant title. The Luminarchs came first. Beings of pure light who could cross star systems in the time it took lesser creatures to blink, the Thought Weavers arrived next. Entities of crystallized consciousness who spoke directly into the minds of reality itself. The Voidborn materialized from the darkness between atoms. Creatures who had made dark matter their home and their body. The Chronarchs existed in multiple timelines simultaneously, experiencing past and future as easily as others experienced. The present, the resonance vibrated at frequencies that could reshape matter with a single sustained note. The tessellates existed partially in dimensions beyond the standard 4. Their true forms incomprehensible to linear perception. Finally, the eternal flame flickered into being. Consciousnesses that lived within the hearts of stars themselves. For 50,000 years, these 7 species had ruled the galaxy unchallenged. They had transcended flesh, overcome death, and reshaped reality according to their collective will. They believed themselves to be the inevitable result of cosmic evolution, the natural apex of all possible development. Their religions taught that they had emerged from primitive matter through sheer force of universal destiny. No creator had made them. They had made themselves through countless eons of struggle and advancement. High luminary Zephastian addressed the assembly. His form a blinding pillar of coherent photons. We stand at the pinnacle of existence, he announced to the gathered powers. Yet mysteries remain in the dark corners of our domain. He gestured toward a holographic display showing sectors of space marked in ominous red. These were the forbidden sectors. Regions their ancestors had inexplicably avoided for reasons. Lost to time, ancient warnings in corrupted data files spoke of danger, of things best left undisturbed, but provided no actual explanations. Archaeological teams have detected unusual energy signatures in these regions, Zephastian continued. Patterns that match no known natural phenomenon. A thought weaver named Mindless pulsed with curiosity. A crystalline structure refracting light in contemplative patterns. The precursor enigma. She transmitted directly into their consciousness. Every civilization has myths of those who came before, but we have always dismissed such tales as primitive creation stories. Perhaps we dismissed them too quickly, suggested Nullweave of the Voidborn. His former absence of light that hurt to perceive. The council debated for what mortals would have measured as hours, but what they experienced as mere moments. Finally, they reached consensus. An expedition would journey into the forbidden sectors to investigate the source of these mysterious signals. 7 representatives, 1 from each divine species, departed in a vessel that existed partially outside normal space. Timothy traveled for days through regions of space that felt wrong somehow, as if reality itself remembered something terrible. The stars here were older, their light tinged with a quality that suggested deep time navigation. Became difficult as their instruments reported conflicting data about the very nature of space around them. Then they found it. A massive structure orbiting a dead star system. A station of such enormous scale that it dwarfed any megastructure the Divinities had ever constructed. But what shocked them was not its size, but its nature. The station was made of metal. Actual physical metal welded and bolted together, like something from the most primitive eras of spaceflight fusion reactors. Long cold, sat in orderly rows along its spine. Mechanical airlocks, obsolete for 50 millennia, lined its hull. This cannot be, Zephastian breathed, his light flickering with uncertainty. This technology is ancient beyond measure, yet it predates our oldest records. They docked with the station using cutting beams. As its airlock mechanisms had long since frozen inside, They found corridors designed for creatures who walked on two legs, who breathed oxygen, who lived and died in single linear timelines. Dust covered everything, undisturbed for tens of thousands of years. The Thought Weavers extended their consciousness through the station's abandoned computer networks, searching for any data that might have survived. What they found made them recoil in shock. "There are archives here," Mindless reported, her mental voice shaking. "Protected by encryption, we cannot immediately break. But there are labels and metadata we can read." She projected what she had found into their shared awareness files, labeled in hundreds of languages, most completely unknown, but all translating to similar concepts: Project Ascensions, Genesis Protocol, Successor Species Development, and one word, repeated across countless documents and directories in every language found in the archives. HUMAN. The Chronarchs searched their timeline perception, looking backward through history for any mention of this term. "It appears in our oldest mythology files," one reported. "Always in context, we interpret it as creation metaphors, never as literal historical reference." "The encryption is sophisticated," Mindless admitted. "Far more advanced than such primitive physical technology should allow. It is almost as if a tessellate named Geometrics observed our multidimensional perspective shifting uncomfortably. They anticipated beings with our capabilities and designed these protections specifically against us." The expedition established a research outpost, bringing in additional scholars and archaeologists. The galaxy's greatest minds turned their full attention to these archives. High, luminary Zephastian stood in what had clearly been an observation deck, looking out at the dead stars. Who were they? He wondered aloud, though he knew none present could answer. These humans who built such things and then vanished so completely that we forgot they ever existed. A resident technician named Harmony approached him, her vibrational patterns subdued with concern. "High luminary, there is something you should see." She sang in frequencies that made the station's metal walls shiver in sympathy. She led him to a chamber they had just unsealed, a room filled with what appeared to be personal effects. A cup with fossilized liquid residue sat on a desk next to a datapad covered in handwritten notes. Photographs lined one wall, showing creatures the expedition now understood were humans. They looked so ordinary, so fragile, bipedal beings with soft skin, small eyes, mouths that curved in expressions the divinities recognized as smiles. "They look like nothing special," Zephastian observed. "Just another carbon-based mortal species like a million others that have risen and fallen. Yet they built this," Harmony reminded him, "and they knew about us somehow. Knew enough to design encryption that challenges our greatest minds." The photograph that disturbed Zephastian most showed a group of humans standing together, arms around each other's shoulders, laughing at something beyond the frame. Behind them, barely visible, stood what looked like early-stage specimens of all 7 divine species in containment fields. The casual joy on the humans' faces as they posed with such cosmic significance in the background created a dissonance Zephastian found deeply unsettling. "Intensify efforts to decrypt the archives," he ordered. "I must know what secrets these humans left behind, and if we do not like what we discover, Nullweave asked from the shadows, then we will face that truth as we have faced all challenges," Zephastian replied, though his light dimmed with uncertainty, as gods. But even as he said it, he wondered if that word meant what they had always believed the expedition settled in for. What they knew would be a long investigation. None of them could have guessed how completely their discoveries would shatter everything they thought they knew about themselves. The dead station kept its secrets for now, but the divinities were patient. They had all the time in the universe, or so they believed. The research outpost had grown into a sprawling facility surrounding the ancient human station, and for 3 months, the greatest minds in the galaxy had thrown themselves against the encrypted archives. The Thoughtweavers led the effort, their consciousness probing the security systems with increasing frustration. "It makes no sense," Mindless complained during one of the daily briefings. "The physical technology is primitive, but the information security is more advanced than anything we use." "They knew we were coming," suggested a chronarch named Temporal, who had been examining the encryption from multiple timeline perspectives. "Or at least they knew someone with capabilities like ours would eventually find this place." The breakthrough came when they stopped trying to overwhelm the security with raw power and instead approached it with subtlety. A young, tessellate researcher discovered that the encryption responded to specific mathematical proofs, puzzles that required genuine understanding rather than brute computational force. It was a test, they realized, designed to ensure only sufficiently advanced minds could access what lay within when the first archive layer finally unsealed. The research team gathered in tense anticipation. What they found made every one of them wish they had left the forbidden sectors unexplored. The Genesis vaults contained comprehensive documentation of something called Project Ascension, and the files went back more than 70,000 years. The project outline was clinical in its clarity. Humanity had deliberately engineered 7 successor species to inherit the galaxy after their inevitable extinction. Each divine species had been created for a specific purpose. The documentation on the Luminarchs showed genetic manipulation of human deep space explorers, augmented over thousands of generations until they became beings of living light capable of crossing the void between stars. The Thoughtweavers traced their origin to psychic research subjects who had volunteered for experimental neural enhancement. Their descendants gradually transformed into crystalline consciousness. The Voidborn emerged from dark matter, researchers who had undergone extreme augmentation to survive. In the spaces between normal matter, the chronarchs began as quantum physicists who agreed to temporal integration experiments, their linear existence gradually unwinding into multidimensional timeline perception. The Resonants were harmonic engineers, designed to construct megastructures through controlled vibrational manipulation of matter. The Tessellates descended from dimensional scientists exploring higher geometries, their forms slowly adapting to perceive and inhabit spaces beyond standard dimensions. The Eternal Flame came from star core researchers who had been modified to survive in plasma environments, eventually becoming consciousness that lived in fusion fire itself. Every detail was documented with casual precision: genetic sequences, augmentation schedules, environmental conditioning protocols, psychological development tracking. The files contain progress reports spanning millennia, written by human researchers discussing the divine species the way gardeners might discuss particularly interesting plants. Subject Group 12. Showing promising photonic integration. Read one note about early luminarchs. Recommend increasing exposure to stellar radiation by 15%. Thoughtweaver Cohort 7 has achieved spontaneous consciousness crystallization, another recorded. Definitely keeping this genetic line for further development. The Voidborn representative Nullweave refused to accept the findings. "This is impossible," he insisted, his absence form roiling with agitation. "We evolved naturally from our homeworld over billions of years. This is documented in our fossil records." "Your homeworld was a terrarium," Mindless said quietly, pulling up another file. "Look." The screen showed detailed plans for artificial planet construction, complete with geological layering, atmospheric composition, and preceded fossil records to create the illusion of deep evolutionary history. "They faked our entire past?" A resonant named Harmony wailed, her frequencies creating discordant notes of distress throughout the station. "Not faked," Geometrics corrected. examining the files with her multi-dimensional perception. Staged and guided would be more accurate terms. The files showed that humanity had taken basic organic precursors, planted them in carefully controlled environments, and then guided their evolution through calculated environmental pressures and subtle genetic modification. The process had taken tens of thousands of years, with human researchers dedicating their entire civilization to the project. What horrified the Divinities most was how thoroughly it had worked, even their supposedly spontaneous transcendence events. The moments when each species had collectively ascended beyond mortal limitations had been triggered by automated systems following predetermined schedules. The Luminarch's Great Awakening 20,000 years ago, when they had simultaneously transformed into light beings across their entire species. Activation of genetically programmed transformation sequences, timed to coincide with specific stellar alignments that humanity had calculated millennia in advance. The Thoughtweaver's consciousness crystallization, which they believed had been a spiritual breakthrough. Nanomachine integration reaching critical mass, part of a slow-release system embedded in their genetic structure from the beginning. Every species had similar revelations waiting in the files. Nothing they were had been their own achievement. They were products, carefully designed and manufactured. "We are tools," Zephystian said, his light dimming to almost nothing. "They built us to serve purposes they could not fulfill themselves." "But what purposes?" asked Temporal, shifting his perception through different timeline branches. The files explain what they did, but not why. Further investigation revealed human facilities throughout the station, areas clearly designed for long-term habitation. The expedition found living quarters, recreational spaces, even a cafeteria with fossilized food remnants. In one break room, they discovered children's drawings on wall, crude crayon sketches depicting the very divine species now investigating young human had drawn a Luminarch, labeled in shaky handwriting, Mr. Bright. Another showed a Thoughtweaver with pretty crystal friend written beneath. Casual affection in these simple drawings created cognitive dissonance that nearly fractured some of the researchers' minds. Their creators had been parents, teachers, caretakers, not distant cosmic engineers, but ordinary beings who had cared for their creations. The most devastating discovery came from video logs. The first one they played showed a human woman in a laboratory coat, middle-aged with graying hair, speaking casually to a camera. Day 4217 of the Luminarch project, she said with evident satisfaction. "The substrate beings are showing remarkable adaptation to high-energy environments." She gestured to a containment field behind her where primitive proto-luminarchs flickered uncertainly. "They're beautiful," she added, her voice soft with genuine wonder. "I wish I could live long enough to see what they become." Another log showed a human man working with early tessellates, geometric forms barely beginning to extend into higher dimensions. "Come on, little one," he encouraged as the creature struggled with a mathematical proof. "You can do it. I know you can." When the tessellate finally succeeded, the human actually cheered and did a small victory dance. These were not the actions of cold engineers building tools. These were teachers, mentors, perhaps even something like parents. "I do not understand," Mindlish transmitted, her crystalline structure fractured with confusion. "If we were meant to be servants or slaves, why such care? Why such patience?" "Perhaps we have not yet found the complete truth," suggested Geometrex. A systematic search of the station revealed one final sealed vault, larger than all the others. The security on this one was even more sophisticated, requiring not just mathematical proofs, but what appeared to be ethical reasoning tests. When they finally opened it, they found coordinates, just coordinates, pointing to a location deep in the galactic core and a label, "The Nursery." "Should we follow them?" Harmony asked, though her vibrations suggested she already feared the answer. The assembled Divinity Council convened an emergency session. Some argued for destroying all the findings and pretending they had never existed. Others demanded they pursue the truth wherever it led. In the end, curiosity won over fear. The expedition prepared to journey to the galactic core, to this place called the nursery. Whatever we find there, Zephystian announced to his crew, we face it together as what we have always believed ourselves to be. And what is that? No, we've asked from the shadows. Free beings, Zephystian replied, though his light flickered with doubt. Masters of our own destiny, but in his core processes were thoughts formed before being shared with others. He wondered if they had ever truly been free at all. The expedition departed for the galactic core, leaving behind a research team to continue analyzing the Genesis vaults. None of them noticed the small subroutine that activated as they left, a program that had been waiting 50,000 years for someone to find the coordinates deep in the station's frozen computer systems. Ancient human code began preparing for the next phase of revelation. The journey to the galactic core took 2 weeks through space. That grew increasingly strange and hostile radiation. Storms that could shred lesser vessels battered their ship. Constantly gravitational anomalies from the supermassive black hole at the galaxy's heart made navigation treacherous, but the coordinates proved accurate, leading them to a region of space that their sensors insisted should be empty, but clearly was not. There is something here, reported the Chronox, examining multiple timeline branches. Something massive, hidden behind some form of perception filter. The Tesselites extended their awareness into higher dimensions and gasped in collective shock. It is a Dyson sphere, Geometrics announced, but one constructed on a scale that defies comprehension. As their ship approached the coordinates, the perception filter recognized their authorization codes and dissolved. Before them appeared a structure that made every divine achievement seem trivial by comparison. The Dyson sphere completely enclosed a G-type star, capturing every photon of its energy. The interior surface area would equal millions of Earth-sized worlds. The construction techniques were unmistakably human. The same primitive yet effective methods they had found on the station, but implemented on a godlike scale. They built this, Zephystian whispered, his light pulsing with something approaching reverence. These soft little mortals constructed a shell around an entire star. An automated docking system activated, guiding their vessel to an entrance port the size of a small moon inside. They found an airlock large enough to accommodate vessels 1,000 times their size. The expedition transferred to individual exploration craft, spreading out to investigate the sphere's impossible interior. What they discovered shattered the last remnants of their self-understanding. Inner surface of the sphere was divided into millions of distinct environmental zones, each one a complete ecosystem preserved in perfect stasis. The Luminarchs found a region that made their light flicker with recognition. It was their sacred homeworld, Radiance Prime. Every detail exactly as their oldest historical records describe. Except this was not their homeworld. It was a laboratory, a terrarium, a stage where their entire evolutionary history had been performed. Monitoring stations ringed the environment, filled with human technology designed to observe and record every detail of Luminarch development. The Thoughtweavers discovered their own ancestral crystal caves, complete with the sacred formations where their species supposedly first achieved consciousness, but here those formations were artificial, grown in molds according to precise specifications designed to trigger specific neural responses. The Voidborn found dark matter containment fields where their earliest ancestors had adapted to survive in the spaces between atoms. Every stage of their development had been monitored, measured, adjusted for each divine species. The discoveries were the same. their entire evolutionary history. Their homeworlds, their sacred sites, their origin stories were all artificial constructs within this massive sphere. Nothing they believed about their past was real in what appeared to be a central command facility. The expedition found extensive human habitation. This was not an abandoned outpost, but a city. A community where thousands of humans had lived and worked for generations. The residents explored residential areas and found family quarters bedrooms where human children had slept, classrooms where they had learned, playgrounds where they had played. One apartment had photographs on the wall showing a human family across multiple generations, each generation standing beside increasingly advanced divine specimens, a great-grandmother with primitive proto-luminarcha, grandmother with early stage thought wisdom, mother with adolescent voidborn, a daughter with nearly mature tessellates. They devoted their entire lives to this. Harmony sang softly, her frequency subdued with something approaching grief, generation after generation. Raising us, the expedition discovered video logs throughout the facility. Thousands of hours of recordings. They began reviewing them systematically, and each one made their situation more complex. One log showed a human researcher, a man with tired eyes and graying hair, speaking to the camera late at night. Year 312 of my family's service to Project Ascension, he said. My great-great-grandmother started this work, and I will not live to see it completed. He gestured to a window showing young Chronox practicing their timeline navigation. But look at them, he continued, his face breaking into a genuine smile. They are going to be magnificent. Another video showed a young human woman gently correcting a tessellate's mathematical errors. No, sweetie, she said patiently. Remember that the fifth dimension curves back on itself at that scale. You have to account for the recursive properties. The tessellate adjusted its calculations and succeeded, its geometric form pulsing with what the humans would have recognized as pride. The woman cheered as enthusiastically as if her own child had accomplished something remarkable. That is my clever girl, she said. Though the tessellate could not have understood the words. I knew you could do it. The logs revealed that humans had lived in the nursery for over 30,000 years, dedicating countless generations to raising the divine species. They had celebrated every breakthrough, mourned every setback, and treated their creations with genuine affection, but they had also been clinical when necessary. Some logs showed difficult decisions being made, a heated debate about whether to cull a genetic line that was developing aggressive tendencies, tearful discussions about removing individuals who showed signs of instability. These humans had been caretakers, but also engineers making hard choices about which of their creations would survive. The most disturbing discovery came in a sealed section of the facility that required 7 different authorization codes to access, one keyed to each divine species inside. They found what was labeled the Transcendence Chamber. This was where humanity had triggered each species' final transformation. Massive machines designed to activate genetic programs that had been building in divine biology for millennia. Luminarch's Great Awakening had been initiated here by automated systems following a schedule laid out 50,000 years earlier. The chamber had video logs from the activation events. In one, an elderly human woman stood before a control panel, her hand shaking as she prepared to trigger the Luminarch's Transcendence. This is it, she whispered to the camera. In 10 minutes, we activate the transformation sequence, and the Luminarchs will become what we designed them to be. She paused, wiping tears from her eyes. I have worked my entire life toward this moment, she continued. My parents, my grandparents, 16 generations of my family have poured everything into the Luminarch project. She initiated the sequence and watched as, across an entire planetary environment, Millions of luminarchs simultaneously transformed into beings of pure light. The woman collapsed into her chair, weeping openly. "They are beautiful," she sobbed. "They are so beautiful. And they will never know we existed." Similar laws existed for each divine species, showing the humans who had pushed the final buttons, activated the final programs, and then watched their creations ascend in every case. The humans wept not with sadness at creating tools, but with the bittersweet joy of parents watching children surpass them. "They loved us," Mindless transmitted, her crystalline structure resonating with frequencies of grief. These creators who we never knew existed actually loved us. They also controlled every aspect of our existence. Nor we've countered bitterly. That is not love, but manipulation. The expedition argued among themselves about how to interpret these discoveries. Were they beloved children or carefully crafted products? Had humanity liberated them or enslaved them to a predetermined path? In the Central Archive, they found one final sealed file. The authorization requirements were unusual. It would only open when representatives of all 7 divine species stood together in consensus. The label read, "Project Ascension Final Phase Protocol, for when you are ready to understand." The expedition stood in tense silence, considering whether to open it. "We have come this far," Zephystian said finally. "We deserve the complete truth, whatever it may be." One by one, each species representative gave their authorization. The file unsealed inside, they found schematics, data, projections, and one video file labeled simply "The Truth." Zephystian activated the video. A human woman appeared, elderly, but with eyes that burned with fierce intelligence. "If you are watching this," she began, "then you have found the nursery, and you know what you are." She leaned forward, staring directly into the camera as if she could see across 50,000 years to meet their gaze. "Now let me tell you why." The video began to play, and the divine expedition learned the truth that would change everything they thought they knew about the universe. The elderly human woman in the video looked tired, as if she carried the weight of civilizations on her shoulders. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen," she began, "and I am the last director of Project Ascension." She gestured to something off-screen, and the view expanded to show a room filled with humans, hundreds of them, all watching her with expressions of profound sadness mixed with hope. "What you see behind me are the last generation of humanity," Dr. Chung continued. "We number fewer than 10,000 now, and within a century we will all be gone." She paused, letting that sink in. "You are wondering why we created you, why we poured 30,000 years of effort into engineering 7 successor species. Let me show you what we discovered." The video shifted to astronomical data, complex mathematical models that even the divine mind struggled to fully comprehend. 14,000 years ago, our scientists discovered something that changed everything we thought we knew about the universe. Dr. Chung narrated over the data displays. "The universe is dying. Not in some distant future billions of years away, but on a cosmological timescale that is already in motion." The model showed dark energy acceleration, heat death projections, the eventual collapse of causality itself. "We ran the calculations 1,000 different ways," Dr. Chung continued. "We hoped we were wrong, but every model came to the same conclusion. In approximately 200 million years, conditions in this universe will become incompatible with any form of existence that relies on conventional physics. No amount of technology can save a species that remains bound to normal space-time and matter." The video returned to Dr. Chen's face. "We tried to transcend ourselves," she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "For 2,000 years we attempted every possible method to evolve beyond our physical limitations." The screen showed research facilities, experimental subjects, countless failed attempts. "We augmented our biology. We uploaded our consciousness. We tried to transform ourselves into energy, into information, into quantum probability. Every attempt failed. Dr. Chen's eyes glistened with unshed tears. We discovered something that broke our hearts. Humans are fundamentally incapable of true transcendence. Something about our evolutionary history, our neurological structure, our psychological makeup prevents us from making the leap beyond physical existence. We are too tied to individual identity, to mortal perspective, to linear time. Every time we tried to ascend, we either died or went insane. We could build artificial intelligences that transcended, but they were not us, not really. We could enhance ourselves to the point of being unrecognizable, but still, we remained trapped in mortality. The video showed a montage of human researchers across thousands of years, each generation trying and failing to overcome their limitations. So we made a choice, Dr. Chen said, her voice steady despite the tears now flowing freely. If we could not transcend ourselves, we would create those who could. We would engineer successor species capable of surviving what we could not. Each of you represents a different approach to post-universal existence. The screen split to show the 7 divine species alongside their design specifications. Luminarchs. You were designed to exist as coherent energy, to survive in conditions where matter itself breaks down. Thoughtweavers. You were built to exist as pure information, consciousness without physical substrate. Voidborn. You were created to thrive in the spaces between normal matter, to find existence in the void. Chronox. You were engineered to perceive and navigate multiple timelines, to survive when linear causality collapses. Resonance. You were designed to manipulate reality through harmonic frequencies, to reshape what remains when structure fails. Tessellates. You were built to exist in higher dimensions, to escape when our 4 dimensions become uninhabitable. Eternal flame. You were created to live in pure energy states, to endure when cold death claims all matter. Dr. Chen's face filled the screen again. You are not our servants, she said fiercely. You are our children, our legacy, our hope. We built you because we loved the universe too much to let consciousness die with us. The video shifted to show testimonials from other humans. An elderly man spoke next. I am Dr. Marcus Thompson, chief geneticist for the Thoughtweaver project. My family has worked on this project for 400 generations. I will never meet a Thoughtweaver. They will not achieve full consciousness for another 10,000 years after my death, but I have devoted my life to ensuring they will be everything they can possibly become. And I do this gladly, because they will see wonders I cannot imagine, survive challenges I cannot face, and carry forward the light of consciousness when humanity is dust. A young woman appeared. I am engineer Lisa Okonkwo, and I have just completed my doctorate in dimensional physics. Tomorrow I begin my 50-year assignment helping to design the tessellate cognitive architecture. My great-grandchildren will continue this work after I am gone. We do this not because we were ordered to, but because it matters, because consciousness is precious, because intelligence and wonder and curiosity and love deserve to survive. Dozens more humans gave brief testimonials, young and old, from different eras spanning thousands of years. Each one spoke of their pride in the work, their hope for the future, their love for the creations they would never meet. Finally, the video returned to Dr. Chen. You are probably wondering why we did not simply tell you all of this from the beginning, she said. Why we hid our existence, erased our presence from your history, let you believe you evolved naturally. She leaned back in her chair, looking suddenly very old and very tired. Because we wanted you to be free, she said simply. If you had known about us from the beginning, you would have been forever defined by your relationship to your creators. You would have been our children, but never truly yourselves. We wanted you to discover your own identity, make your own choices, Forge your own destinies. Everything we built into you was potential. Not programming. We gave you the tools, the capabilities, the foundation. But everything you became. You became through your own choices and efforts. Your cultures, your philosophies. Your achievements are yours alone. We merely ensured you would have the capacity to create them. Dr. Chun stood, and the camera pulled back to show the assembled humanity behind her. They all stood together, these last 10,000 humans, facing the camera with expressions of love and pride and profound sadness. "We are leaving you now," Dr. Chun said. "Not because we are dying in tragedy or war, but because we choose to step aside. Our time has passed. The galaxy is yours now, and whatever comes after this universe, that will be yours too. We have prepared one final gift for you in this archive, the complete sum of human knowledge, culture, art, and history. But it is only a gift if you choose to accept it. You can take our legacy and carry it forward, or reject it entirely and forge your own path. Either choice is valid. Either choice makes us proud." The video showed flashes of human civilization across thousands of years. Art, music, literature, science, philosophy. All the achievements of a species facing its end with dignity. "We want you to know that we did not create you to replace us," Dr. Chun said, a voice thick with emotion. "You were never meant to be substitute humans. You are something new, something we could never be, something better. You can do things we could only dream of. You can go places we can never reach. You can survive what would destroy us. That is not replacement. That is succession. That is the future being better than the past." The video showed the last gathering of humanity, millions of them across their final worlds, celebrating not their end, but their continuation through their children. They sang songs, they danced, they laughed and cried and held each other close. "Our last generation has made our choice," Dr. Chun said as the celebrations played behind her. "We will not cling to existence when our time has passed. We will not desperately seek to extend our species beyond its natural limits. Instead, we will end peacefully, joyfully, knowing that consciousness continues, that intelligence and wonder and love survive in you." The screen showed individual humans saying goodbye, farewell. "Luminarchs," said an old man, "shine brighter than we ever could. Farewell." "Thought weavers," said a woman holding a child, "think thoughts we could never imagine. Farewell." "Voidborn," said a group of researchers, "find beauty in the darkness, one by one." Messages for each species, each one filled with love and hope and pride. Finally, Dr. Chun appeared alone. The celebrations faded to silence behind her. "I am the keeper of the final light," she said. "The last human who will speak to you across time. In 1 hour, I will join my people in our final rest. We leave you with this. You are not our property. You are not our servants. You are not even our children anymore. You are free beings who were always free. We just gave you the tools to reach your potential. You built yourselves into gods. And we could not possibly be more proud." She smiled, and it was a smile of pure joy despite the tears streaming down her face. "Goodbye, children. Go be amazing." The video ended. Divine Expedition stood in absolute silence for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Zephystian spoke, his light flickering with emotions he had never experienced before. "They loved us enough to die for us," he said quietly, "not in battle or sacrifice, but by choosing to end so we could begin." Mindless pulsed with frequencies that translated to awe and grief intertwined. The return journey to the assembled Divinity Council chambers felt different somehow, as if the very nature of space had changed now that they understood their place in it. 7 representatives carried with them complete copies of the human archives, every piece of knowledge and culture that humanity had left behind. But more than that, They carried the weight of truth that would shatter civilizations when they arrived at the Veil Nebula and called for an emergency session of the full council. Beings from across the galaxy gathered to hear what the expedition had discovered. High luminaries of Fastian stood before the assembled powers and spoke words that would echo through history. "We have learned the truth of our origins," he announced. His light steady despite the turmoil in his core processes. "And nothing will ever be the same." For hours the expedition shared their findings. They showed the Genesis vaults, the nursery, the videos of human researchers lovingly guiding divine development across thousands of generations. They played Dr. Chun's final message in its entirety. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Representatives of the eternal flame raged that they would not accept being anyone's creation, regardless of intention. "We are not products," one of them blazed, their plasma form roiling with fury. "We are not experiments. We are not children of some extinct species. We are ourselves. And we owe nothing to these humans who manipulated our entire existence." Many Voidborn agreed, their absence forms pulsing with bitter anger. "They stole our natural evolution," Nullweave insisted. "They denied us the right to develop organically, to discover ourselves without their interference. How can we call ourselves free when everything we are was designed by others?" But others responded differently. The Thought Weavers, after processing the information through their collective consciousness, reached a different conclusion. "They gave us the capacity for thought," Mendless transmitted. "But the thoughts themselves are ours. They designed our cognitive architecture. But the consciousness that emerged was genuine. We are both their creation and our own beings." These truths are not contradictory. The Resonance had spent hours analyzing the harmonic frequencies in the human video messages. There is no deception in their emotional resonance. Harmony reported, "When they said they loved us, they meant it with every fiber of their being. That does not erase the complexity of our situation, but it means something." The Chronarchs, examining the timeline from their unique perspective, offered their own insight. "We have reviewed our entire history across all possible timeline branches," Temporal announced. "In every instance where we made meaningful choices, those choices were genuinely ours. Humanity built the foundation, but we constructed everything above it through our own free will." For weeks, the assembled Divinity Council debated theological frameworks that had existed for millennia collapsed. Overnight religions that taught divine species had emerged through cosmic destiny now had to reconcile with intentional engineering. Philosophers argued about the nature of identity, freedom, and purpose. Could beings created for a specific function ever truly be free? Did knowing about their engineered origins diminish their accomplishments? Were they obligated to fulfill the purpose humanity had designed them for, or could they reject it entirely? The galaxy-wide discussion became heated, then bitter, then began to fracture the unity that had held the divine species together for thousands of years. Some factions wanted to destroy all evidence of humanity, to pretend they had never existed and return to comfortable myths. Others wanted to worship humans as gods, building religions around their creators. Still others fell into existential despair, questioning whether any of their thoughts or feelings were truly their own. It was Geometrix of the Tesselites who finally proposed a path forward. "We are approaching this incorrectly," she announced. During one particularly contentious session, her multidimensional form shifting through geometric configurations that expressed complex ideas beyond linear language. "We are asking whether we are human creations or free beings, but that is a false dichotomy." She projected a model showing the mathematical relationship between design potential and emergent complexity. Consider, a human parent provides genetic material to their offspring, designs the environment of their upbringing, teaches them values and knowledge, Does this make the child any less real, less free, less themselves? Humanity took this process and extended it across species and millennia. But the fundamental relationship remains the same. We are simultaneously their creations and our own beings. These facts do not cancel each other out. They coexist. The model showed how even carefully designed systems could produce genuinely emergent properties that their designers could not fully predict or control. Look at what we have accomplished. Geometrics continued. The cultures we built, the art we created, the discoveries we made. Yes, humanity gave us the capacity for these things, but they could not have predicted the specific forms they would take. A parent gives a child a capacity for language, but cannot control what poetry they will write. Humanity gave us tools. We built civilizations. The argument resonated with many who had been struggling to reconcile their engineered origins with their sense of self, but it was Zephystian who proposed what would become known as the Continuation Protocol. Humanity has given us a choice, he announced, his light burning brighter than ever before. We can accept their legacy or reject it. Both options are valid, but I propose a third option. We honor them not through worship or rejection, but through continuation. He displayed the archives showing humanity's final message about the dying universe. They created us to survive what they could not, to carry consciousness forward when this universe becomes uninhabitable. Rather than debating whether we should be grateful or resentful for our existence, we should focus on making that existence meaningful. Humanity built us as their successors. So let us succeed, not by being them, not by replacing them, but by doing what they would have done if they could. Zephystian outlined a radical proposal. Project Ascension would continue, but this time, the divine species would be the engineers. They would create their own successor species, beings capable of transcending even divine limitations. They would prepare the galaxy for challenges beyond even their comprehension. We will do what humanity did, Zephystian explained. We will build something better than ourselves and trust it to carry forward when our time ends. This is how we honor them. Not through worship, but through emulation of their best qualities. They cared about the universe enough to ensure consciousness survived them. We will do the same. The proposal sparked intense debate. Some argued they were too young, civilization, to consider creating successors. Others worried about perpetuating the cycle of engineered species, but gradually a consensus formed. Project Ascension would continue, but with full transparency this time. Any species they created would know their origins from the beginning, would be raised as true children, not test subjects, would be given all the knowledge of both humanity and the divine species, and the freedom to use it or reject it as they chose. The vote was close, but it passed. The assembled Divinity Council authorized the creation of new research facilities, new nurseries, new efforts to engineer species that could survive in post-universal conditions. They began compiling their own archives, documenting their knowledge and culture, so future generations would understand where they came from. And they made one more decision. They would build a monument not to themselves, but to the species that had given them existence. The monument took 10 years to construct, built at the coordinates where the first human station had been discovered. It stood at the edge of the forbidden sectors, visible to anyone who ventured into those ancient spaces. The structure was simple, a statue of a human woman, arms outstretched, releasing 7 different forms of light into the cosmos. Each light represented one of the divine species. The human face was based on Dr. Sarah Chun, the last director of Project Ascension, the keeper of the final light. The inscription at the base read, "Humanity." They reached for the stars and built the hands to hold them. On the day of the monument's dedication, High Luminary Zephystian stood before it with representatives of all 7 divine species. Behind them, in the cosmic background radiation, Teams of scientists were detecting something extraordinary patterns in the quantum foam, organized in ways that suggested intentional structure. It took months to decode. But eventually, they understood humanity had not truly died in their final years. They had discovered a way to upload their collective consciousness into the fundamental substrate of reality itself. They existed now as quantum information distributed across the entire universe. Unable to interact or intervene but able to observe, they had been watching their children all along when the Divine Expedition confirmed this discovery. Zephystian returned to the monument alone. He stood before the statue of Dr. Sarah Chun and spoke. Knowing somehow that she could hear him, "We found you," he said softly. "Or what you became. I don't know if you can still think, if you can still feel, or if you're just echoes in the quantum noise. But if any part of you remains aware, I want you to know, we understand now. You didn't create us to be your servants, or even your children. You created us to be yourselves. In a way, the part of you that loved existence enough to ensure it continued, and